I was afraid that I was boring.
You're such a vibrant personality, like that. Initially when you were saying we need all these balloons and we need, I think you wanted to like make a dress out of like 20 different dresses or something.
I know.
And I was like, we don't need that. Like you are interesting on your own, and people, we don't need to like rely on some kind of prop or some kind of fakeness to show people how, how vibrant and how great you are. And so I don't think we did, in the end, the essence was you. And my favorite photos were like you running were some of my favorites. Just seeing you, like the joy, I think that's what people like really connect with anyway. So that's why I love the shoot so much, because I think we were able to do a bunch of things that you love to do and just kind of document them with, a sense of bombastic like energy, but also at its core, it was just like true to who you are. Mm-hmm. So those were some of my favorite shots, but yeah, you peeing, you peeing on a run.
They're never going to put it in a magazine though, as real as that is.
Unfortunately, that one got cut, but check out, Instagram for the BTS.
That's right. Check out We live in a complex and ever-changing world, a place that is maybe harder than ever to successfully navigate. The answer is surely to be brave, but it's also to seek and be open to guidance. Mentors are the one consistent through line in the lives of all accomplished people, myself included. So welcome to Mentor Buffet, a feast for those, like me, curious about who helped the most successful among us succeed. Sinna Nasseri is a new friend of mine and a photographer whose work you probably already know. He comes from such a unique background where he changed his whole life when he realized that he was on a path that wasn't right for him. And he's chosen time and time again to see the world as this abundant place where optimism is the lens through which he sees his work and the whole world. We talked today about what it is to be prepared to capture lightning in a bottle, what it is to change the way you see the world, and what it is to be observatory and not conclusionary, both about your creative life and your life outside of the arts. Sinna also challenged me to look at myself in ways that I haven't thought about before. When Sinna shot me for the outside cover, it was one of the most fun days of my life, to be honest, because everybody was having fun. Everybody trusted that we were there for the same reasons, and there was no fear of humiliation or making a mistake. There was only opportunity. Another thing I learned from him is, in photography, you don't expect every photo to be your best one. And that's a really beautiful way to live your life, where you're able to just take leaps and try things and know that there are gems in there and we don't have to be afraid of making mistakes. I think there's this sense of play that you'll feel with this episode and in my conversation with Sinna, and this sense of curiosity as the guiding North Star and the feeling that the universe is there. And if we wait long enough, something interesting is going to present itself. And we just have to give ourselves the chance to jump when we feel tickled by it. Here's my conversation with Sinna, who you may know as Strange Victory. I really haven't ever worked with somebody who was so spontaneous.
Really? Okay.
I mean, look, I go out with my friends. I go out with mine and Carter and we shoot and we have fun, but the stakes are not as high when we're doing it. And you in a high stakes situation opt for that. And it's awesome. And it's like what makes you you. And you resist the alternatives.
Yeah, I like to make things as hard as possible because I think we all know that kind of the best things are born out of difficult experiences. I've found your most rewarding moments are those that came from struggle and from the difficult time. So when I do a shoot, I kind of tap into that and try to make things not planned out and throw random, difficult problems in for myself and for this, for, you know, the collaborator and for the team as well, just to see what happens, and maybe something like that I hadn't planned would come out of that. I just think the spontaneity, you know, that's what I'm interested in because it's more real. And if you plan things and have them, you know, an exact way you want it and an idea in your mind beforehand, what it's going to look like, then you're hurting the final image in a way, because, you know, anything that you can really see and plan isn't going to have that like magical X factor that came from somewhere outside of you, and that you want to, like, that's kind of the goal, is to tap into something new and spontaneous and energetic.
The question that came to mind is like, do you have experiences in your life that were unexpected and led to something wonderful?
Well, photography for one, you know, that was something that, you know, I did for I guess it wasn't that long, but from like 2017 to 2020 without a lot of traction or success or any kind of accolade or being published or anything like that. So it was a bit of a grind, and doing something that you think could be good at. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of people telling you, you know, it's really, really hard, and that this industry is dying, and that it's impossible to make money, and you're going to struggle. Like, you're way behind, you're too old. Just to have that in the back of your mind, and also seeing people that you respect, like, also they look like they're doing really well, but like you know, you get to meet them, and even they are like, I'm not sure where the next job's going to come from, and they're kind of on shaky ground. So you're like, this is the person that I look up to, and even they are struggling. So like, how am I going to make this happen? I mean, it's, you know, that was always like a really tough kind of mentally, just because, you know, it would have been pretty easy to quit. And I mean, this was something that I totally stumbled into and had no like real background in doing photography. So there was no reason to like continue that much, other than I just like loved what I was doing, and I had an idea that it would be fruitful in the end.
You had that feeling.
I just had that feeling. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just really loved it and connected with it, especially compared to, you know, my previous job as a lawyer, where you're inside all day and you're working on computers, and you don't really meet people and get to know them, or like aren't thrust into new situations that much. You're sort of, you know, doing, at least for my corporate job in the lawyer world, you're doing a lot of like kind of menial tasks, even though they're hard and they take a lot of like brain work and like mental acuity. But it's just like, I kind of went for the total opposite job in a way.
You did.
I was like, how can I like literally be outside and be on the street all day meeting people and like capturing their lives and showing, you know, that what would do that?
And a live changing thing that you can't change, you can only capture. Like, I'm not a lawyer, but it's like, it occurs to me that like being a lawyer is like looking at something that is, and like understanding it and whatever, like you're deciphering, it's like a fixed thing, right? Law, documents, like that whole environment is so like, there's a lot of control in it. And in your life now, it's a lot of like harnessing a moment that you can't control.
That's so true. Yeah. Photography, it's about like such an ephemeral moment, and you just have to let go every time. Like, there's so many times where you're like, well, that would have been a really good photo if this came together with that, but it never did. But okay, we're on to the next like possibility. Like seeing these different elements of life come together, you know, like, oh, if that patch of light was hitting, you know, this area, and then kind of like that moment of intensity with, you know, this person that you're capturing or trying to capture coincided, like that would have been a one in a million moment, and you were ready, but it never happened. And then you're like, okay, well, what's the next thing that like we could be ready for?
Wow.
And it's just like constantly waiting for that.
I can learn so much from that, because it's like, it's an act of like constant forgiveness and moving on, where like at least for like an athlete, there's like a lot of heartbreak in those ships crossing in the night, if you will, or the moments that don't happen and don't come together are like, can be life altering. Whereas like for you, it's like, it reminds me more of like in ultra running where you have to, in ultra running, you just make decision after decision after decision. And what you're saying is like, you're there for the lightning in a bottle to happen. And you're also aware that it might not, or it might, it might be half lightning strike and you have to move on. Like you are conditioned to like accept that is also possible.
Yeah, you have to move on quickly and be ready. I mean, especially when I'm on assignment, say covering an event, you have to produce a certain amount of images to represent the story or to, be in the magazine. And you can't be like lingering on one thing for too long. Otherwise you'll fail. So it's a lot of failure, and it's a lot of just trying different things that don't work out. And then once in a while, like, you're like, okay, I got one, and you kind of have this count in the back of your head, like, all right, I have these two, and then I need to like focus on, this type of image that counters what I was working on before, but is different, that shows a different side or a different person or a different, aspect of whatever it is I'm covering. But I think, as a photographer, and it's all failure. I mean, 99%, if not more, of your photographs are like thrown away and never really looked at again. And you just kind of know that coming in. And so it's definitely a process of just letting go of that completely and knowing that you're building like sort of the blocks towards a really, really good photo by making these kind of lesser photos. And there's something like they're a little bit of like a sketch aspect, like, I was working on this idea earlier, like 10 minutes ago. How can I elevate that and like add something or make it even better to create like one of those kind of images that will say everything, say more than what you were working on before. So it's just a constant like building of elements and aspects. And
that sounds like music. I don't make music like that, but I've been in a room where people are making music, and it's like there's like parts where you like these parts, and except that you can't control whether they're all going to be able to like play at the same time, but you have like an idea that it could. There's a lot in this conversation already about like believing in potential and following a feeling and kind of believing, essentially being open to it. Mm-hmm. Which is sort of what we talked about when we did the shoot, is like you have an idea that the universe is going to like provide. You're open to it.
Definitely. Yeah. You said a few interesting things. I mean, I grew up as a pianist, and so my whole life when I was a kid was my parents, who were immigrants and obsessed with the piano for some reason, just like driving me to piano school twice a week. And I like competed in competitions, and it was like pretty intense, sort of like an athlete, but in the music world. So that's interesting. I've never heard really anyone. I mean, there's obviously a connection between kind of street photography or like this like spontaneous candid style photography and music, especially like jazz music. I think a lot of people that I know that are into this kind of thing, they're into like skateboarding and like jazz or like some kind of weird improvisational like music, which I love as well. But I mean, that's my guiding point in all of life, is just optimism and just turning everything that happens to you, even if it's clearly horrendous, like into a positive. And just like, it's dumb, but like, if it really, starts pouring and you had this whole shoot planned out, I mean, like rain, like photos in bad weather are some of like my favorite photos, so it's like, okay, get out there, like get ready to just take whatever comes and like flip it into a good thing. I mean, that's constantly my mindset. And I think it's like hard to live any other way. And especially like the way things are going, these days, like it would just be hard to fight life. Like I just want to be friends with life, or just like consider it my friend, like everything that comes at me is a friend, or a way like to see something good, or to, create something interesting, or, and so that's kind of my guiding principle, I would say.
Have you always been like that?
I don't think so, actually. I grew up in New Jersey. And, New Jersey's famously like very cynical. And I think a lot of like the way I grew up was, a lot of negativity as like a joke, but also like kind of just complaining about life. Like that's, a funny way to approach things. And I kind of tried to switch my entire brain. Like this was when I was transitioning from being a lawyer to a photographer. And this is kind of part of how I did it, is that I just practiced like literally just thinking that every single person I saw or everything that happened to me was good. And like I would just flip that in my head. So I had like a teacher, I had a meditation teacher actually named Kadam Morton in New York City, who taught me a lot about the immutability of life and how, things are less rigid and less like plastic than you think, and how you can just kind of, your reaction to things decide how the world's structured, how your world is structured. And I think that's like now just basically, it's kind of been proven like through neuroscience and like studies they've done. I mean, the world isn't seen the same by different people. Like we're literally different, living in different realities based on your perception of the world around you. So I realized that that was true innately once I learned that. So I just decided to just go with it and shed my kind of New Jersey upbringing of like negativity and literally just like make everything positive, even if it was really bad. And it seemed to work. And now I just go through life and I'm like, if I point my camera somewhere, for long enough, or I look closely long enough, like I know something interesting is going to happen. I know something good's going to happen in terms of making something powerful.
Yeah. And when you choose a craft that invites, or like actually a part of it is that nine out of 10, or I don't know what the ratio is, are going to be thrown away, then you don't have to sandbag anymore. Right. Because that it's a sandbag mentality to say everything sucks because it's comfortable to feel like you're right. Right. So, and it's comfortable to have your standards be low because then there's no expectation and there's no failure if you've already failed or something, if everything already sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And so to then be in photography where losing is a part of it anyway, like it's built in that it's not all going to be the shiny stuff. You're more neutral on it too, right? It's not bad. Bad isn't bad. Bad is like part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not so dissimilar with sports, right? The winningest teams lose, blah, blah, blah. Like that's like, it's different, but it feels familiar.
When you're starting out, you're like, this is great. You're excited, but you don't realize that like, maybe it's a bit facile, or maybe this has already been said before, or maybe like this photo's been already made thousands of times because you're just kind of excited and starting out. And that's great. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But the like deeper you get into it, the more you realize how difficult it is to make something like that really, really pushes the limits in like a visual medium.
I'm wondering, like, when do you pause to have those conversations with yourself? Whether it's like, when do you grow? Because a lot of your life, you have to take action. When are you pausing to do that growth? Is it like every day you're thinking about it? Is it right before you go into social interactions? Like, how do you change your worldview like that as an artist and as a human?
It's a habit. It's a habit of mine to like literally, I mean, I think for one, we categorize things very, very quickly as humans. And that's like part of how our brain is set up. And it's like security. It's for security. And I love to try to, just to try to counter that, like counter your base wire, like your base wiring. And I think it just takes habit. And like, so when your first thought is X, you literally just think the opposite. You teach yourself to think the opposite, and you just constantly do that. So if I see someone say like, who looks scary or whatever, I'll just be like, no, that's a good person. Like they're not scary. I'll literally say that in my brain.
You have a conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you have a real relationship with yourself.
I have like an inner dialogue for sure.
You do?
I've read that some people don't have an inner dialogue, which I think is fascinating because I can't imagine, but it's, I'm always thinking and like having an inner dialogue, whether it's observing how, elements come together or how like, people interact. It's just like a constant dialogue, I would say. Do you not have that?
No, I do. It's funny because I was talking to Matt about this, my producer, about the dialogue and just like who the two people are. And, because it can be two identical people. For me, it's like an older than me and a younger than me. And that becomes me, I guess. It's like almost like a maternal figure and almost like a child. And one is a little bit wiser than I am now. And one is like a little bit more vulnerable than I am now, but hasn't been able to like say whatever. And so one can talk to the other. And then when I have them talk, it's a little different than what I truly was ready to say in that moment. We're going a little farther in that conversation. So.
Wow. So you have like elements of the future within you.
Well, maybe it's a wisdom that I'm not accessing as easily. So I have to slow down and have the conversation to create space to access it. And that's why I was talking to you about this space of like, even when we were sitting down and talking about being critical of your own work. And like what I wanted to ask was like, yeah, when do you carve out the time to like either evolve as a person, whether it's like how I see the world, mm-hmm. or look at my work and learn from it and evolve and level up on your photography game? And like, are you conscious about that time? Is it all the time? Is it before you talk? Is it when I enter a room? Is it like, and I don't know what comes to mind with regards to you as a human or you as an artist, but I am curious about, I don't know, because when we're grown-ups, like we don't have school years anymore. We don't have mm-hmm. midterm reports. We don't have check-ins. So how are we getting better? And is it a discipline or is it just like happening? Is it on airplanes? You fly a lot?
Yeah, I think one thing I love about what I do is I have these distinct projects and distinct assignments that I do. Mm-hmm. A newspaper will send me somewhere to cover, a convention of, a political convention, for instance. And, every one of those you need to, go through all the photos quickly and edit them and send like a small selection to your editor. It's, that is a huge part of being a photographer, as big as taking the photos, is finding the photos that speak to you and you believe are like representative of what you want to say, and sending them to your editor so that they can then take a wider selection and pick the ones they want to represent what the writer's saying or what their publication's saying, or like what they find to be like the best, summary of the event or like the most powerful photo. So while I'm doing that, constant, which is like a constant thing because it's always due, like after it, I'm always looking very, very closely and thinking, that could have been better. Like if I did like a little bit here, like added a little patch of light here, if I put something in the foreground on this one, it would have really elevated it, but I didn't. Or, the shutter speed was too low here. The colors aren't right. The flash was a little too harsh here. Like if I was low, like the angle was lower, if the angle was higher, if this person's, face, if I waited till their face was more expressive. So it's like a constant looking at the photos, which I have to present to my editor and then, the readers or whoever's looking at the photos. So it's intense because I'm like, I want to make it really good and I want to make it better. And I'm always like searching, like, how do I make it better? What did I do wrong? Or not wrong, but like, how can I tweak it? Like, what can I add? It's amazing. That's why I love what I do so much, because I have these distinct assignments and I can learn from each of them like constantly. And they're all kind of different too. So it's like, that's one of like my favorite things is like to go through and to like be really hard on myself and look at my work and just say to myself, like, what can I do to improve it?
Do you feel like excitement or pain, or like what do you feel when you notice something that could be improved?
Yeah, it's like it's painful. It's definitely painful, and it's frustrating. Because the moment's gone, you're never going to be able to make that photo again, and obviously you have to accept that. But I get to keep photographing. Like I get to keep going. There's going to be another chance to make a similar photo or to use that has a similar message or a similar like construction, you know? So that's why it's painful that I didn't like do it like to my standards, but there's always like that hope that it's like, okay, but like I'm ready for the next time. You know, like we talked about, you know, it's like so hard for all these elements to kind of come together for like it to be like a really like, you know, like I'm always looking for like a once in a lifetime photo for whatever reason. Like it's like this weird idea in my head that, you know, like other photographers, and I respect them so much, is that they can make like these kind of smaller photos and have it all like add up into something like really profound. Like for whatever reason, like I have this idea in my head that like each photo needs to be like have it all in there, have like the whole universe and like every piece element of like what I'm trying to say or what this like distillation is like all in there in one. So that's what I'm like always searching to do. And it's really, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but like for whatever reason that's in my head. And
why doesn't it make sense?
Because I mean, life's too complex to really simplify like a whole like situation. A complex situation is too complex to simplify into one photo, like typically, you know, but I reach for that because like those are the photos that I'm most like amazed by other people that I can sit with forever. I'm like, this is the perfect photo, and I want to look at it for over and over and over again. So that's what I try to make for myself.
You make me feel, at least, that we can live our life that way, even though the image might be beyond what feels possible, because it usually, when it's at its best, it is a lightning in the bottle. It's if you can capture if people can feel a little bit of that all the time, that's how you move forward with this kind of pep in your step that you're talking about, that you're living yourself. People, Promorph is here from Meryl. And you know what's exciting about the Promorph? I am a girl that likes to run on multiple surfaces. I like track, I like roads, I like grass, I like dirt, I like going from road to dirt, I like not knowing where I'm going and finding my way. And these are the shoes that I bring with me because these can go on every surface. Pavement, dirt, gravel, grass, rock. Where else do you run? Stairs? And when I switch surfaces, the Promorphs have my back, and they will have yours too. They're comfortable. They have Float Pro technology. They have this sort of grip on the bottom that really does go from surface to surface. The other day, I went out my door, as I often do, up the road to the dirt, eventually ended up raining a little bit, was still fine in the Promorph, and looked good doing it, okay? These things are fast also. When I went on the track, I ran my fastest 800 that I've run in a very long time. So look out for me on a start line in my Promorphs very soon. Promorph by Meryl. And for a limited time, this is actually a really big deal. You can get 25% off the Promorph. That's really, really awesome. Using the code MentorBuffet25. You gotta do it, people. Like, these are awesome. They're probably gonna sell out. Who knows? I'm probably gonna win some races in them. I don't know. We could match. I mean, I remember calling you and being like, do you want me to like build a balloon tree in my house? And you were like, nah, I don't want a fake tree of balloons in your house. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I'm glad you have a point of view. And you're like, I want reality and like to really have fun in the real world. Or even with the cupping, I was nervous that the cupping marks like weren't going to show. So I was like, maybe the day before I need to get cupped. And you're like, no, I don't think you need to do that. And I've just never, like, clearly I've never had an experience like that where the goal was not, I think I was afraid that it wouldn't represent what you wanted it to represent. I was afraid that real life wasn't as cool as you think it is. I was afraid that I was boring.
That's what you were afraid of. Yeah. That's really interesting. I mean, you're you're such a vibrant personality, like that initially when you were saying we need all these balloons and I think you wanted to like make a dress out of like 20 different dresses or something.
I know.
And I was like, Alexi, we don't need that. Like you are interesting on your own, and people, we don't need to like rely on some kind of prop or some kind of fakeness to show people how vibrant and how great you are. And so I don't think we did, and we did do some fun stuff. We had you be cupped, and you did wear a dress of or a swimsuit made of laces of running, so we did fun things, but like in the end, the essence was you. And my favorite photos were like you running were some of my favorites. Just seeing you, like the joy, I think that's what people like really connect with anyway. It's not like all the kind of pomp and circumstance, but it's like the real heart of someone's personality is just kind of them doing what they're passionate about, them doing what they love. So that's why I love this shoot so much, because I think we were able to do a bunch of things that you love to do and just kind of document them with a sense of bombastic like energy, but also at its core, it was just like true to who you are. Mm-hmm. So those are some of my favorite shots. But yeah, you peeing, you peeing on a run.
They're never going to put it in a magazine though, as real as that is.
Unfortunately, that one got cut, but check out, Instagram for the BTS.
That's right. Check out
other ones, were, you getting cupped and having these kind of huge, like bulbous mounds on your back with like pus coming out. And like, it's sort of like the I need to look like so great and perfect for this shoot, which I really, really appreciated from you, because it's a lot of pressure to like, put yourself out there and not like be like perfect on this huge magazine shoot. And you were willing to do that. And I think that's why we were hopefully so successful.
Yeah. I got emotional because I was like, oh wow, it's this interesting thing was like very, to think you're not interesting enough is a weird thought. Well, you also had a point of view, because there was some shots that I didn't actually know the dynamic of like what the setups were versus what you had wanted, because it was all coming in one direction. So I thought, like, for example, there was an idea of like a coffee shot, and you're like, I don't want to sit for fake coffee. And I think that part of your job and part of your art is having a point of view on what does and doesn't make sense, and what you do and don't, what doesn't feel real to you, even if it's set up. And so for whatever reason, that wasn't speaking to you. And you said it, and I'm glad you did.
Yeah. Well,
or eating pizza became going to the Shakespeare Theater.
Right.
Thank God.
We took an idea that was, probably not going to be that interesting, though. I bet you we would have come up with something cool.
Yeah.
And instead of just being okay with it, we kind of pushed it further and further to where I was like, well, is there somewhere else, something else in Topanga that interests you? And you came up with this genius idea to go to the Theatricum Botanicum, which I also love. And I had photographed, the proprietor, Ellen Gear, earlier for a different story a couple of years ago. And it like all came together so beautifully, because I knew that place, and I knew, like we were talking about before, I had taken shots on that stage before, and I knew what were the problem points, like what I needed to look out for in terms of lighting, in terms of like, the color. And so I was ready.
Oh, that's cool. So you got to return to a place that you had been. I didn't think about it as
and that's why we use like the trap door. I was like, let's open the trap door. So we could have just been in a pizza shop and like have a shot of you like with a giant piece of pizza. And yeah, it probably would have been good, and it probably would have run, but we got to try to do something like that was like more kind of over the top. And then the spontaneity came in when all the kind of actual actors started arriving, setting up for their rehearsal, and we ended up getting them kind of in the background moving around you
because they didn't care,
and it was real life. Like they were just had to move props, and we were doing this kind of crazy shoot in like with them as background actors, even though they never kind of signed up for that. And there was this like weird surreal moment where we kind of looked at each other and we're like, this is where it's at. And I think everybody was like, that's kind of the energy we were looking for.
Yeah. It's nice when people allow, like, I keep using this word mischief a lot in my life, but like there's a little bit of mischievous energy in worlds blending like that without permission. And I feel like there's so many rules in this world, and there's borders and boundaries and fences and language barrier. There's a lot of boundaries between people interacting with people that they're not supposed to or have planned to interact with. Even manners, can get in the way. And there's something awesome about art that somehow it sometimes allows the fences to fall without even talking about it. And that's sort of what happened in that moment, which was quite cool, and maybe it's because people see art as good. Like, I don't know. I'm like, why is it easier? Like, because then we went over and the parasailers also let me, like, I was holding that girl. Like, it was like, there was an intimacy there that I was in her space. I was in their space. I was in their training grounds. We kind of talked about it, but not really. And it was allowed. And I think people love art. I think there's something romantic about photography that people like. But I also think people are hoping in their life to be interrupted for a good thing.
Yeah, we're always stopping ourselves from doing things out of fear or etiquette. But in the end, like when we approached those people and just started photographing them, and then you almost took the parasailing like yourself. You almost started flying without, like they were so happy. I felt like they were
happy.
And you always think like, oh, I'm going to be intruding, but really you're not doing, if you come with like a good intention, like it's so often such a positive thing for everyone involved. And there's that like little bit of magic where you're meeting a stranger and making something. My favorite shoots are typically like just walking around with someone. I mean, the shoot that we did for Outside was more produced, and there was so much involved because it's a cover shoot. It's a magazine. So you need, certain people there and you need different, like different locations. But if I just get like an hour, like to walk around with someone, I'm always pushing them to kind of like, hey, go next to that person, like go talk to that person, and they'll be like, no, like they're so uncomfortable. But eventually a lot of the times they warm up to it and they'll try it. And I can see them kind of stepping outside of themselves, and then like something comes from it, something interesting comes, and like the other person's really usually pretty pleased as well for whatever reason. And you just walk past that fear and your like initial like concerns, but like in the end, like what is the real concern? We're trying to make something cool and new and artistic with help from the world around us. Why would that be bad? Why would that be a negative?
What I noticed in those parasailer people was that they actually leaned into being more themselves when they realized that they were being photographed. And like, I wonder if you walked by and you ended up getting a photo of a guy like scooping ice cream and he realized he was being photographed in the background, and they like, maybe he does it with a little more pride, like to be seen. There might be the opposite of shame, might be pride in like how you are on this planet and what you are and like the delightful role you're playing in this scene. There might be like, there's two sides to it always, right? Just like your worldview. And maybe with the right energy, you can make someone's day, right? As you said. And it's almost like it's not neutral. Like I even think for those actors on the stage, even though they ignored us, I think that was part of their non-neutrality. I think that was part of them being really proud of who they actually were, which were thespians setting up for Midsummer Night's Dream rehearsal. And I think that had they been like, hi, that's actually not I feel like they were being their prideful selves, which is cool.
Yeah.
That's like a really cool way to like play with the world.
I'm always just looking for beauty and people at their best, or something kind of like, even if it's just like someone's wearing an interesting coat or like a beautiful color that I would want to use in my photo or to like highlight in my photo, it's always a positive, or it's always like some piece of like intrigue that they can bring to us and like add an element to the shoot. It's part of just like thinking about the richness of life. And it is like it comes back to optimism, just saying how rich life is if you take a second and look closely, like how interesting every person is, like if you really look and take the time, and then adding those, as kind of be actors, or like see elements to your photograph, where obviously Alexi's the star, but we want to see how Alexi goes through the world and how like these kind of rich elements of life interact with her. Because if it was just you, then I think we learn less actually about you than if it was you plus, these other elements and how you interact with them. That's more interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. And going back to that, like, observatory versus conclusionary point of view, when you go into any shoot, whether it's like political or entertainment or anything, it seems like what you're really trying to say is exactly what you just said, which is how rich life is, how interesting people are, versus good and bad, right and wrong. Even if you're in a really charged situation, your observation is that. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's a non-judgmental way of looking. I honestly wouldn't have the time or energy to judge everything I'm looking at and to photograph. Like it's a fool's errand to try to do that. And that goes back to how we are wired to kind of quickly try to judge things, which I push back at as much as I can, because it's not my role and it's not helpful to anyone to just be judging in my photos. I mean, there's just an observational curiosity that underlies everything, and just a sense of here's like a person, and we're curious who you are. How did you come to this conclusion, or how did you get wrapped up in this?
Yeah. And that's what we're missing, is that curiosity. Like in the world's conversation, there's like not a lot of room for that right now. Not that we don't to get political, but it's like that's the third option, right? It's not just this and this. There's like a way to understand people or see people and learn that we might have growth that we could do, and look at ourselves more and slow down. And so you slow people down too with your photos, because if they're so unexpected, then you have to take time with them, which is helpful.
So do you felt like you're not interesting enough to have kind of a story about you? Is that why you got so? Because I've felt that before, that like I'm not that interesting. Like when you asked me to come on the podcast, I was like, no one's going to really care that much, So why do you think
People care.
Do you feel that way? Sorry to make you cry.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think I think that I've always felt like well, I think I need to go to therapy. I think that I have always felt like I need to be like, I feel like I'm nobody's problem. Like I really know myself enough to know that I don't feel that I'm nobody's going to look at me unless there's something to look at, is what I've felt, because that's how I grew up, and that's a thing to deal with on my own, I think. But it didn't happen. So whatever, you lost my mom, whatever. And my dad is just not, he wouldn't notice what color my eyes are, even though he loves me. And so I think that if I wanted to get attention, it had to be attention grabbing. And that is probably bad. But I think it's my default setting and it's my instinct. And also like with sport, you know, I was with a guy who did not think it was that cool that I was an Olympian. And it wasn't that he was like, you could be anything and I would love you. It was like, this is lame. And we made films about sports and I felt bad because he didn't want to make films about sports, even though this was my world and this is what I have something to say about. And so I felt that it was all lame. And sometimes I still feel like it's lame, but I'm growing and I'm learning it's not lame. But I think I've just had a lot of experiences where it's either you have to like be loud and rambunctious or get someone's attention to have it. No one growing up asked me how my day was, which you learn in time that you have to ask yourself that. You shouldn't need someone to ask you how your day was, which comes back to that dialogue that I've built with myself. But you still want it. I guess there's just been enough data that maybe it's not enough. So my impulse is always to make it more than enough instead of falling short, because you don't want to waste people's time. And I think for this shoot, I had like so much respect for you. Like I was really excited and like, you know, you had just shot Walton Goggins, right? And like, he's so interesting. That show is such a hit. Like I might run a really fast race this fall. I'm going to write an amazing book. I'm going to make great TV shows, but I didn't publish a book in the last year. I don't have something right now that's as glittery as that. So it was like, you are part of this. This is a cover. I better be good enough. Bryan Cranston has this stuff about like when you're auditioning for a role, you're there to do a job, not get a job. And it's so brilliant because like you are auditioning, but you're there to give your take. And I think that what I probably need to tell myself is like, you're there to do, like you have the job. You're there to do the job. Whether it's like, okay, someone wants you on the cover, you have the cover. So just, you're there to be yourself. And it can always feel like in life that you're auditioning for something you already have, even friendships or romantic relationships or writing jobs, or I don't know how you feel about when you're shooting. I don't know what you feel about yourself, but it can often feel like things are a tryout when they're actually not. And that's a mistake. But it's also because I'm afraid it's all going to go away or someone's going to realize it wasn't that interesting. So that's what I think I'm going through. And then it's all dumb, really dumb. And I am enough. I know that. It's just like, I can't stop my first instinct. Also, I needed to know that I told you the ideas so that you could, when you said no to them, I thought it was awesome. But I felt like I wasn't providing enough if I didn't provide the ideas. I told you that on the phone. Remember when I was like, I don't care if you say no to any of this stuff. Do you remember that? I was like, It's okay. You could say no to anything. I just want to know I said it. It was like I had a compulsion to tell you everything so that you could say no. I'm glad you said no, but I felt like I had to say it to provide, like, if it wasn't enough. I thought also that I was like, maybe I didn't know if this was like boring for you. I didn't know.
But together you said your ideas and then we kind of came to our ideas together that like made more sense, like to which were better. Like I don't, because what is this impulse also to represent the self versus just be the self? Like, what is that? Like, what the fuck is that? Like this desire to like heighten yourself, to make people understand that you're awesome, or to make people feel. I think my life is an adventure. I feel like I'm like swinging from trees every day. I feel like that without the balloons there. But I feel like people won't understand that unless the balloons are there. They won't understand that it's awesome. I think we both, we focus on how others perceive us, like pretty heavily. And that comes with, I think so too. Yeah. I mean, it comes with being in, being in a role like where you're have to show your work, or you're in like a public kind of space, like when you're running a race or putting out a book, you're really putting yourself out there, and people, that like people are watching. So it just becomes heightened. And yeah, I mean, maybe that could be our next project, to rewire our brains to not care as much. I mean, that would be really helpful for me. I mean, yeah, because photography, I mean, there's like every instance, there's like the fear involved of, I really want to take this photo, but it could be seen, it could lead to like some kind of offense potentially. Like someone could be offended if, they took it in the wrong way for whatever reason, because you're not able to really explain yourself beforehand a lot of the time. So there's always that fear, like it's constant fear. And if you could get over it, or like just the fear of saying like, well, I want to go in the middle of this auditorium and take a picture of the crowd where like every single person can see me, but there would be 40,000 people watching me and being like, what is that? Or what's happening? Or why? And then, but if you can just get over that and not care, that would be helpful. That would really help. That could be our next project.
Okay. Hello, Mentor Buffet listeners. This is your host, Alexi, and I'm inviting you to go to voicingchange.media/mentor buffet and fill out a form to help me understand what kinds of guests you want to hear from. We know the show is about mentorship, and I'm super curious. Who do you want to learn from? Who are you curious about? So go to voicingchange.media/mentor buffet and please take 2 minutes to help me better improve your experience with my show. I'm so excited to keep this show going, interview guests, learn from them, and help you learn too. Thank you. This episode is brought to you by Square, your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. Okay, if I were starting a dream business, I'd sell soup, because I really do love soup. And I would, of course, use Square to process payments, because how else would I ever be able to process payments and get people their soup? But I would also use it to manage my finances and build a loyal following and all sorts of other things. I need my soup business to be a big success, and Square knows that. My local soup business can be a big soup business. And as we level up, things become more complex. This is real. Square started as the little white card reader, and now it's here to power things behind the scenes, whether it's helping expand to new locations, build a loyal following of people who love my soup, or covering cash flow gaps. Go to square.com/go/mentor buffet to learn more. That's SQUARE.com/GO/mentor buffet. Square, meet you there. Soup. Do you think that you hide behind the ambiguity of an image though too? Because it's not words, and you can like have tried to say something or feel something and you don't have to own up to it always?
Definitely. And it's also, I mean, being kind of a journalist, it's a way to hide, because it's sort of, you're not really supposed to put your views out there explicitly, which can give you cover to kind of make things ambiguous. And you can say, well, that's my job. But yeah, it's something I think about.
Is that why you're so excited and scared to make a book?
I mean, I just think,
That's less neutral is what I mean. It's more like your book would be your book. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really hard to make a book like at the level that I want to make. So that's my main fear, but I think that's part of it too, is putting sort of your opinion, or I mean, if I made a book, I don't think it would just be like the rest of my work, ambiguous and like more like interrogative or curious than sort of like some kind of statement. But again, I mean, a lot of people say that sort of like, well, the most interesting photography doesn't really come to conclusions, and it like asks questions. Like that's a cliche that a lot of people say, but I do think about that is that a cover for not wanting to take a stand or not being, bold enough to like actually say something and not just ask questions, like put a conclusion out there?
Yeah. And you don't know yet.
I'm not sure. I mean, yeah.
You don't have to know.
It's something that I'm thinking about, definitely. But I've always been averse to concrete, cut and dry explanations of things that are complex, and I just don't think that there are that many cut and dry answers typically. But in some instances there are, and and there's no way around it.
I feel so excited for your book because I feel like it will be all of those things, like at its best. Like it will have parts, like it will move through something that has that inconclusiveness, that observatory thing. And then there are some things that are true, that are, and there's ways to do that. I mean, we don't talk about this now, but like there's ways to like say all of those things. And that is saying something. That's your point of view, which is cool. And it pushes people to think differently. Again, it's just to see things differently, to see things more observatorially, which is optimistic because it means it's alive. There's like more ways to see things.
Well, I'll say you were like one of the most fun subjects I've ever had, and because of like just your personality and your physicality, and you were climbing trees. You were peeing outdoors. Your cat was incredible.
Oh yeah, Gretch is she's dramatic.
You were definitely one of my favorites, and
it's fun.
Yeah, I think when you told me that you felt like you were just able to be yourself, that was the ultimate compliment, because that's my goal.
I didn't feel like it at first, actually. I felt because there were like in my office, I was like totally, it was hard because there's like your manager, the magazine, and you, like I felt like more myself when I just felt like I was, when that stuff kind of moved away, that felt a lot better to me. Because I'm always holding a lot of things in my head at once. I'm sure a lot of people you work with, if they know they're being photographed by you, they're not just with you. They're holding a lot at once. Do you know what I mean? They're holding an image. They're holding a future. They're holding their past. They're holding what they hope. They're holding so much. So to be present with you is the ultimate gift, because you are present with people. Because you don't need anything out of the moment but the moment. That's your mandate. That's your worldview as an artist. That's who you are. But a lot of people, I'm sure, meet you and they're not just with you some of the time. I felt that way, right? And then in the moment, and when I was finally able to, and I need to figure out how to do that more, it was so much better.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably so normal, and I'm very cognizant of it, especially when photographing someone who's like, for instance, like having their first big profile in a magazine. I realize how important that must be to people. How intense and how much like pressure that is, and because that's for a lot of the time going to be your main representation historically, or like for your friends and family. So it becomes such an element of who you are this one day, these photographs, that go along with like the story about you. I always have that in my mind, and I realize like, and I try to like make people comfortable, and just, a lot of it is like, listen, we're going to make really good photos of you. If they're like, I'm going to take a lot of photos, the ones that aren't up to snuff, like no one will ever see, and just kind of like trying to make people calm down a little, because I realize how intense it must be. I can't be photographed really at all. Like I'm really bad at it. So I get it. Like when people try to like photograph me, because then it's trying to understand, being in that role, because it's like, it is weird. It's really a strange kind of.
What do you feel?
I just freeze up. I lose all
really
all brain power. Like I forget to mew. you know.
Oh, yeah. You're teaching me.
My posture is horrible, you know.
Mew, what does that mean? Mew, what is mew?
It's when you you sort of like move your jaw and like press your tongue to the roof of your mouth to like create like a strong jawline.
Yeah, you're good at directing. Yeah, because you were helpful. Anyway, that's funny that you feel that way when people photograph you. Talk to me and imagine that the kid sitting across from you is somebody who.
Are you the kid?
I'm the kid, but okay. It's not me. But I mean, because you asked me earlier, like, who's listening to this? And I'm like, tell me about your transition, but tell me as if I might be in your shoes. I might be in a different career path. I want to learn from you, but I need help.
Yeah. I was a lawyer and I was unhappy. I was unhappy with the trajectory of my life. And I realized I was doing the wrong thing. I wasn't doing what I was meant to be doing. And I was able to recognize that and kind of throw aside all the training that I'd done and kind of societal expectations and like parental ideas of what I should be doing, and somehow throw that out and try something completely new with no real expectation or like idea that this would like work out, but just a feeling. And, you know, I started really getting into the New York City jazz scene, and going to all these jazz shows while I was working as a lawyer, like at night. And I became obsessed with starting to record those shows for some reason. I had this just urge to record them. So that's why I bought a camera, was to do like really shitty videos of like these weird jazz musicians in dark bars. That was how it started. And once I had that camera, I just kind of started taking photos, and then I became influenced by street photography in New York City because I had no training or schooling. So the way I learned was just walking around New York City and taking photos of my neighborhood, and also kind of the people that I used to work with, like lawyers and bankers. I used to go to the neighborhood, Midtown Manhattan, where I worked. I used to work, and instead of going to work, I would just walk around the streets of Park Avenue, of Lexington Avenue, and Fifth Avenue, and observe people and kind of, in a way, try to show like who I had started becoming via taking photos of these strangers.
What a way to process too.
What's that?
To process.
Processing. And I think it was a processing. Like, you know, once in a while you just wake up and you're sort of like look around and you're saying, how did I get here? What am I doing? Why did this happen to me? Like, why am I in this situation that I didn't want to be in? Like, I chose to be in this situation. I went to school to be a lawyer.
Yeah, you did tests.
I did a million things, and I took this intense job. I was the one that decided to do that. But why? And so it just like shook me to my core, you know? And I realized like I gotta change. And it was really tough. And it took years and years of just working every day and learning on my own, and also being just like looking up to people and their work. And
from afar?
From afar mainly. I mean, there's a bit of a community of like photographers in New York, that ones that like to kind of just wander around the streets and photograph strangers, which, you know, can be seen as a little bit weird, but there's like a long lineage of street photography and candid photography that has created like some of the most beautiful images that the world has ever seen. So there's definitely a group, like a community and a group of people that I learned from, and, you know, who I always looked up to, Daniel Arnold, who's like, you know, just kind of the guiding star of, you know, New York City, like street photography, I guess. But yeah, it was mostly, you know, I never went to school or anything like that. I just learned on my own and just tried my hardest every day for years and years. But yeah, I decided to photograph. Yeah, that was my first project, was photographing kind of the businessmen and the lawyers that like I had worked with, basically. And I ended up kind of, you know, seeing some of the people that I did work with, and I don't even know if they like really recognized me, you know, like I was like wearing different clothes, I was doing different things, and
t-shirt and jeans.
Dark cloak, you know, ski mask. I was robbing my old bosses. It was great.
Wow. Yeah.
No, it was really kind of like a way to process it, and kind of a therapy of sorts. It was like to like roam those same streets with like a film camera and try to get like these like intimate views of people without asking permission or setting it up or even having any like real ideas of like what I was making or what I was doing. I just felt the urge to do it. I think it just kind of happened like so naturally. Like I never even really made a conscious decision to do it. It just kind of like happened once I had the right tool, once I had a camera. I think also just finding sort of this style of photography that was like less contrived and more like observational, as we talked about, because I think that was just like always my personality. It was like always looking and like observing things and like thinking like that's really funny, or like that's a person that like I find like I'd love to like bottle that up, you know, like I've always thought that.
It's moments that caught you. Like initially, right?
Yeah. I remember like as a kid, like literally being like, I was probably like 5 or 6, like in the back of my parents' car and like just staring out the window at all the other people and being like, I wonder where they're going. Like, I wonder what their story is. Like that was something that for whatever reason, I was always just like curious. And then finding out that there was like this like style of photography that like tapped into that, I think was when I realized that like it could be something that I could do. So I've always tried to just bring in kind of like my initial guiding principle of like curiosity and kind of like candidness and realness to like whatever I shoot.
To any world.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's kind of like what I want to tap in like with our shoot, you know, like, or if I'm like, you know, Walton Goggins, you know, like I'm not there to like tell Walton how to represent himself and like exactly what to do. Like I want to give him the space, like an area, you know, an area of the city or like a little playground to like pop around and show his personality, which is what he did in like Santa Monica by the pier, which for that shoot, just for Cultured Magazine. But we ended up, it was my idea to have him in a yellow Speedo on the Ferris wheel when he like stripped down, which ended up like being a pretty viral moment. But I think, you know, the whole shoot kind of like led up to that, where he was playing around and having fun and fans were approaching him and he was fishing and, you know, just being himself. And then eventually we sort of like kept pushing it to kind of reach that like that conclusion.
Yeah. It sounds like how people should parent, where it's like give them a playground to play in and let them be themselves, you know, like in instead of like controlling every element of it, right? There's like a little playground and then it's like go and express.
And for you, we're like there's a tree you can climb if you want.
You guys are just like, we want to find a tree, Yeah, the tree.
The tree.
We got it. I mean, we found a tree at least. I feel something in common because I think we both do things that people can see the result and they can appreciate what it is to accomplish your image or my running, if it's just the running or whatever. But there's so much that goes into it. It's worldview, it's life lessons, it's resistance, it's actually training in a way, you know? And it's really cool to like just feel like in tune with somebody and then to appreciate it more through this conversation. Like I appreciate more that what you're doing comes from such a real place. Like it comes from a place, you know, it's not arbitrary. And to have it all come together is the alchemy of it's your life. It's coming together. It's your life that comes together in those moments. And it's somebody else's life that you're capturing, but it is really your lens, you know?
Like I think anyone at a high level, like there's so much that, like you were saying, goes into it that we can't, like a person that's not steeped in it or isn't in that world completely just cannot understand.
Like me putting salad dressing on my food.
You putting like dumping high sugar salad dressing on your food. Insane. No, I'm just kidding. No, like no, seriously, like to run 100 miles, like what goes into that? Like I could probably ask you questions all day. Like there's so many calculations you're making, like, and like you probably wouldn't even be able to, my brain probably couldn't even understand a lot of what you would even be able to describe to me in maybe a similar way of like the way I try to put together like a photo that will last 100 years and people 100 years from now will look at and be like, damn, like that's like representative of something, a time or a culture, and which is always the goal. But like, I would love to learn more. I'm sure there's like so many similarities that maybe we could figure out.
I think there probably are. I think as long as you're not hurting anybody, if you're self-actualizing and honoring yourself in a moment, you are helping the world. You don't want to hurt people or like displace or, you know what I mean? Take someone's spot in something. But I think you're doing good if you're self-actualizing. I think it's interesting. And I think what you had to say was really like, it made a lot of sense that like, yeah, but you have to continue to evolve. That's actually part of you existing fully is like, it's alive and it's only alive if it's changing. And you need to keep up with yourself and what it's a live thing, right? It would be dead if it didn't change and there is no finish line for you. So you're always going to be evolving. And maybe that's makes it a lot easier for you to accept imperfection and accept going against the whatever way you grew up, because there's an optimism in the expectation being always evolve. That's awesome. That if that's what you're destined for and doomed for, it's kind of a good thing. Because there's no expectation that it is ever done. So there's always another opportunity, which is life. I don't have any more questions, but I'm so happy to be friends and keep being asked hard questions from you. And I'll keep asking you hard questions because it's helping me really see myself differently and it's helping me appreciate what you do differently. And I want that. So thank you.
Thank you.
If you're enjoying Mentor Buffet, follow Voicing Change for more inspirational and truly life-affirming content from shows like Soul Boom, The Proof, Feel Better, Live More, and the Rich Roll podcast. Just go to voicingchange.media. That's voicingchange.media for a beautiful selection of productive and positive shows.